Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
I've been patiently waiting, and we're gonna take it like that. You can say we found it the right time, and we rise again. Like Phoenix on the sun.
To conquer the INDYCAR Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series takes mastering road courses, street circuits, short ovals, and speedways alike. But we kick off the 2026 campaign with a challenge of the Action City. Welcome to Long Beach as Captain Consistent Diogo Pinto starts his championship defense. Our Junior Kanki Party joined alongside once again by the ever-wonderful Kenneth Bueno. And KB, what fun we had back in 2024 as iRacing IndyCar regulars went up against some of the best in all of sim racing. Diogo Pinto, Phil Kraus battled all the way to the very end, but Captain Consistent, the former Porsche Esports Super Cup champion, came out on top, and we get ready to do it all over again.
And like you said in the open, Diogo's got a challenge on his hands. Not only is it a mostly new field, but he's got all the experienced drivers from that very last season trying to take that crown away from him. We saw so much competition in that first season. It's felt like ages since we've gotten this series back on the ground. We're here at this moment now. Long Beach was a fantastic race last season, so it's all on the drivers to put in probably the most muscle out of the others to win at a very difficult road course like this.
And last time out, it was Cooper Webster that grabbed the pole and grabbed the win, but ultimately a driver that led the championship just missed out on holding onto his championship license. He had to re-qualify his way into the series in his search for this prize pool, totaling up to $50,000, but KB, our champion, walks away with $20,000 US.
That's a lot of bands for a champion in this Thrustmaster iRacing IndyCar Pro Series. I mean, it's going to be great to see, and you look at all of the cash prizes going down to 15th. We had 12 drivers that were already locked in from last season based on points. If you finish anywhere within that realm, you're coming home with some cash. So that's good news for all those drivers, even those that may need to re-qualify the following season. There's got to be that top 15, and we enter with a brand new schedule, just a bit shorter in Arjuna from the last time out. We had 10 races split evenly amongst road and oval circuits. Now it's mostly dominated by the road courses, which is going to be a storyline in itself. We had the whole championship, Diogo Pinto, Philip Kraus. That was all based on the balance between who was good on the ovals, who was good on the road courses. Now it's going to be a bit tougher for those oval guys. They got to be more double-threaded. They're going to be one of those drivers in contention for the title this year.
And no chance to breathe. We run all the way through February the 26th and get ready to kick off the 2026 NTT IndyCar Series as Alex Palou starts his own title defense. You have your chance, by the way, in that fan vote to determine where we go for the penultimate round of the championship. It could set up a championship showdown. Barber Motorsports Park, the Alabama roller coaster, or the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Two very unique tracks in terms of their flow, their undulation, KB. But crucially, no ovals in the mix this time around. Our drivers know a maximum of 3 ovals and 5 road/street courses to fight on.
Yep, it's all dominated by the road courses this season, but these are 2 great tracks last season. Great competitive fights at Barber, where Luke McEwen was able to grab his first and only win of the season. Mid-Ohio, which we saw Eduardo Leo finally get back on the top of the podium after winning the first race of the 2024 campaign. 2 of these tracks, very different in nature, lots of elevation in Barber. Mid-Ohio the same way, but it's a bit rougher on the track surface. So for the fans, everybody watching out there on iRacing's platforms, you get to decide where these drivers go next. And I think such a compelling part of this series is that they don't know where they're going until that fan vote is over. So a little bit less time to prep.
But the here and now, we race on the streets of Long Beach, just under 2 miles, a layout modernized in 2000. But KB, it's a challenge, and a street course leaves little margin for error to open up the season.
You know, I've driven here several times on the sim, and it is physical. That's what this track is all about. You got to set up nicely for all of these different bumps, all of the different types of corners. Oh, and by the way, it's a street circuit, so any mistake, there's no runoff. It's just walls on either side and tire barriers. We saw the effect of that last season when it was race 2 of that campaign. It's going to be the same deal here. And for Cooper Webster, started off his season very strongly with the win here at this 1.968 mile, 3.167 kilometer road course. That's where the drivers are going to have to figure out where that green flag takes them, especially that first corner into the fountain.
And so Luke McEwen will lead us to green for the first time this season. Won here in the qualifying series back in 24, but flies the flag this time for Team Redline. He's got Dan Amel. Watch out for the young Brit for Coanda. While Florian Lebiga, Alessandro Bico, Diogo Pinto, our champion, and side of Eduardo Leo. A sea of Redline at the front of our starting grid. Phil Kraus second and really getting off on a much better foot in qualifying. He lines up 7th inside of Michele Costantini, the Italian representing Team VRS, while Alex Spetz-Vidrago inside of David Toth, your top 10 on the grid. And barely a 10th through those front 5 rows to find Nicholas Matteo and Josh Thompson as we work our way through some of the rookies to focus on. Sotomuto, who raced in Ferraris in 2025 in the real world, is alongside a former teammate Jaden Munoz, who now represents his own flag. As a privateer, he starts 14th. Ricardo Rico and newcomer to Drago Racing, Peter Berryman, share row number 8, while Sam Coiter, the tall Dutchman, inside of the Williams Sim Racing Academy entry of Pablo Espez. Starting to get towards the mid-pack and where the danger zone will be on the run-up to turn 1, the Frenchman Elliot Veyron, alongside the Brazilian Gustavo Ariel, who's got plenty of fans in our chats. Tamas Shimon, the Hungarian, has got Vasilius Belitsiotis for company on row 11. Mateo Kunzer and Esteban Rodriguez for Nexus Esports, one of our storylines, and Kwame Scott then back in 25th. Jacob Oster makes a switch to Team Hype with Powerslide Motorsports. His teammates Alex Vandersen and Alex Russell line up behind, while Michael Romanidis, first driver with no time on the board and a former pole sitter in the series, will have some work to do. Adam Blocker, internet issue for him. He will line up back in 30th alongside of his teammate Rob Maleshka, who won an oval back in 2024, but we know the road courses are where he will have to fly his way forward through the field. KB, our drivers get ready to heat up their tires on this formation lap. 2 compounds to use, but crucially, while there is hybrid that they have for the first time in a competitive sense, it's push to pass that will define strategy alongside of fuel and tires here today.
It's always fun to see the difference in push-to-pass methodology for the drivers. A lot of them like to use it early. Several others like to wait until those final few laps to use it. But it's 41 laps here today from Long Beach. It's just a tad longer by 1 full circuit around this Long Beach street circuit than we had last season at 40, just a little over 80 miles in length. Remember that both tire compounds must be used, so beyond the Waiulis that some of the drivers have so far to start, and those that are on the harder compound tires, they will have to pit at least 1 time to make that tire compound switch, or else it will just be null and void until the end. And that pit road speed limit clocks in at 45 miles an hour. But remember, it comes off of a very slow and very meticulous turn 11. That hairpin has always been chaotic since the beginning of Long Beach's time in this configuration. So with both tires out on the plate, it's going to be fun.
And the first driver on the primary harder compound, the slower tire, is Phil Kraus back in 7th. Row 4, where those harder tires will shine. As 25 miles an hour, we work our way through the hairpin and to the start of a brand new championship season. Our champion Diogo Pinto back in 5th spot. Red line get us going on the streets of Long Beach in the INDYCAR Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series. And look at the pressure up to turn number 1. Feisty to the inside come those red line teammates. What can Dan Amor do? Our champion of the qualifying series holding on around the outside as we trickle up towards the hairpin. Amor goes around. Big chaos as Biko takes advantage, and there is a track blocker, rush hour traffic KB, and chaos bedlam in the mid-pack.
And there's more trouble. Ricardo Rico ends up upside down. He's going to take another car with him. And in the run-up to turn 3, it just became absolute chaos. The 2 Drago Racing entries. Not only Rico, but Peter Berryman and more cars are still stuffing it. Look at all those wings all over the racetrack. Nobody's got downforce now. It was a huge crash in that found corner, and I was just about to say, clean in turn 1. It's all mayhem right now in this opening lap.
And the driver up in 4th, Florian Lebigra, has got a meatball, so no safe place on that opening lap as Luke McEwen will end 2 miles later with clean sight in his mirrors and now a chance to establish a dominant championship advantage and momentum on his side. 1 lap complete, expecting about 20 laps on the Waiuli tires if drivers want to make as little fall off towards the end of the stint. And look at that, Lebigra, Ariel, Top, Muto, a handful of cars into pit lane at the end of lap 1, and they joined Dan Amor, Eduardo Leo, Rico, Coitet, Veyron, Van der Sande, who all took the tow KB. Bedlam on the opening sequence.
That is horrible for them, especially the start of a championship, which we know is much more of a dash than it was last season. 10 races last season versus 8 this time around. You have to maximize every amount of opportunity you get to gain as many points as possible. And it was really just simple contact. I mean, it's such a narrow point of the circuit where you have that found on the right side. You've got all those tire barriers on the left. And where Dan Amor and Florian Lebigra are doing battle for 2nd, where Lebigra had started 2nd here last season, he was 3rd this time around, and it just ended up in chaos for them. And practically as everyone just stuffed up trying to get out of it, it ultimately created further sequences of contact, and it just became a huge mess. So for many of the drivers that started at the front, now they're going to have to figure out a way to just survive this race, and I don't think anybody really wanted that to be the case. They wanted just to have a solid race today. As Philip Kraus under the defense, there's Nicolas Mateo trying to make a move in turn 1, but just smartly waiting back until you get out of turn 3 at least.
Left side, you can see the green highlight indicating when drivers begin to use their 200 seconds of push to pass. They could not do so on the opening lap. To illustrate the level of chaos, all but the top 14 have been down to pit lane as Mateo shows his nose, but down at turn 6, sweep the momentum and Kraus will hold on. Rob Malechka's just joined them as well. So only 13 cars avoided chaos. And Adam Blocker, who lost internet, failed to set a qualifying lap time. Well, the Chip Ganassi Racing engineer in Indy Next finds himself back in 13th spot. And suddenly, a big smile on his face, the frown from qualifying turned upside down. Phil Kraus feeling the pressure, and that's on the primary, the black compound of tire. Waiuli's behind, and Alexander Spetz begins to use the push to pass. You can use it in defense. That's what Kraus is doing up to turn 1.
Well, you're seeing that different balance between the Waiuli tire drivers in Mateo and Spetz in turn 1 versus what Kraus has to do just to keep up with these drivers. And for those that don't know what the push to pass is, there it is on the bottom right of your screen. It adds at least 50 to 60 horsepower to these Dallara IR18s. Obviously, more horsepower, you've got a faster race car, and holds on moments like these where Kraus is just playing defense, and you have 200 seconds of it, to which Kraus has already used up a good amount, nearly 30 seconds of his push-to-pass time allotted at the beginning of this race has basically been used at this point, just staying up in float. But I'd imagine as long as you can hold on to this defense, Arjuna, if you can beat Kraus and maybe save a bit of that push to pass, just hold those guys off for the next few laps. Once those Waiulis start to drain in their life, you start to have a bit more pace from Kraus's IR18, and then he's got good position because he's really the only spearheading primary tire user at the beginning of this race that escaped all of the madness in turn 2.
Yeah, Michele Costantini's dropped back a little bit. Remember, he started 8th, he's in 7th. Kraus started 7th, is up to 4th. And actually, he's not going to lose out too much. This is only a 41-lap race, and word on the pit lane was you only need to run the alternate tires for about 20 laps, and so 41 minus 20, it's pretty simple math. About half the race will be done on the Waiulis, half the race done on that slightly harder compound. The advantage is going to be, though, Phil Kraus will be on the faster compound of tire when we get to the end of the race. Already, our race leader, Luke McEwen, carving through the traffic. And look at Alessandro Bico, 2.5 seconds back, starting to do the same.
You know, I just want to mention, by the way, that Costantini, Romanidis, and Pablo Espes, although they're holding spots in the top 10, they're all damaged. They have wings gone, they have the rear wing gone, they have some sort of condition that's ailing their race car from being 150%, so they're really just swinging on to what's going to be that pit stop in the race. They don't want to go in so early that it kills their track position. But really, I mean, they're just holding on for dear life. Espes has been without the front ring for the first few laps, but he's stringing on a run good enough for 9th. I mean, that's just how chaotic that first lap was, Arjuna. Took out all of those heavy hitters, and even those that survived the mess, yeah, they're not done.
And speaking of that opening lap, our camera guys have slowly picked their way through the chaos. And so as we head up to the fountain, keep an eye on Dan Amor in that Kawanda esports machine. He gets turned on the nose of Florian Lebigra, and it's from there that KB, that set-off, really starts to happen. A lot of drivers, let's be honest, trying to drive through the scene of the incident when there was nowhere really to go.
I mean, you have the mix of drivers who are in the middle of the track surface, so it's hard to even get around them. Then you have those that are, again, like you said, trying to drive through the incident, and they want to say, hey, I mean, these cars are slowing down. I can gain some position if I put my nose right in this space, and then it just closes up by either those cars that are getting out of the way, or like we saw just a bit on that replay, an ailed car in the middle of traffic spun around, trying to reverse and just get back going as quickly as you possibly can. Understanding the way this first race has gone so far and the shortness of this season, you have to get going very quickly. Despite getting knocked down, you got to get back up, and that involves even just being in the middle of a huge crash like that in turn 2.
Well, and, you know, as we take a look at the face of Luke McEwen, and I always love this in sim racing. In the real world, hard to look behind the visor when the helmet gets strapped on, but in the sim, you see the tongue going around as Luke waggles his way over through turn 5. But fundamentally, when we talk about some of these drivers, staying consistent in such a short championship is difficult. And so Diogo Pinto, his championships have come from being consistent, hence his nickname, Captain Consistent. And for a driver who had maybe less oval experience, Kenneth, than some of the other drivers in the series coming into the championship, Diogo was, let's be real, remarkably consistent. There was, yes, a couple of finishes where he didn't get all of it, but the reality was 11th at Nashville was good enough for him, and he averaged over the course of the season 6th. All that you need to do in these short championships where there are no drop rounds, stay out of trouble, keep yourself in the top 10.
Well, then you kind of think for a driver like Luke McEwen, what his story could have been in that 2024 season. There were several missed opportunities and several races in which McEwen had a fast car. Things could have gone much better for him. Would have been top 10s or top 5s, or in the case of Iowa, if it wasn't coming down to pit road strategy and having enough fuel for the end, McEwen would have won that race. So it really did make a difference for a driver like McEwen. So many missed chances where the luck just didn't fall your way, and it just ends up resulting in a lesser place in the championship. Good luck with Alessandro Bico, who made his name, of course, in the Porsche Esports Super Cup 2023-2024. Now taking his chance with INDYCAR. Very successful this season, winning the iRacing 24 Hours of Nürburgring not that long ago. So Bico running well in second and trying to put that Williams Sim Racing IR18 up into the front. And by the way, this defense for Kraus, Arjuna, it's starting to dwindle a little bit, but he understands the tire advantage is where he sits. Just has to be very patient.
Getting closer to the crossover point. Already Nicholas Matteo has slipped on through. Matteo, Spets, Bico, they are rookies in this championship. but like KB mentions, not rookies in sim racing. Biko, a race winner in the Porsche Esports Super Cup. Matteo and Spets with similar credentials. And as we look at Phil Kraus on the left, the computer science student living in Wisconsin, Alexander Spets on the bottom right, representing Drago Racing. He's just come off his first full season in the Renault Clio Cup Bohemia, where he was third best junior in the championship. But it's great to see that Drago Racing, Kenneth, are giving drivers like Alex this opportunity to step into the real world and race in these series with the same liveries that we see often out there in the sim as well.
I think that's so cool to have that blend. I mean, you look at other teams as well. BS Plus competition, you know, that comes to mind with Garrett Lowe in the NASCAR Euro Series. They run the exact same scheme in the Euro Series that Garrett Lowe did in the 2025 NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. So that's cool when you have that blended reality of the sim racing world versus the teams and the drivers that come out of the sim racing world and ultimately become really successful real-life drivers and start to make a name for themselves. So really cool to see that. And Spets in his first race in this series, one of the many rookies that got into the Indy NXT qualifying series, doing well for himself right now.
And don't forget, if you think you can potentially qualify for the next series in the many iRacing Pro Championships going on, including this INDYCAR Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series, head to iRacing.com. New memberships are always 40% off, and a great chance for you to jump into the world of sim racing. Phil Kraus jumps over the curb at turn 5 and push to pass active from Alex Spets. You can see the dash light up green as he tries around the outside, but he's just not got the grip as those Waiulis halfway through their stint start to fall off. Phil Kraus pushing the issue and really getting up close and personal to the wall as once more push to pass active. 700-yard dash down East Seaside Way, but continuing to frustrate. Phil Kraus now 1.5 seconds back from Nicholas Matteo.
And you know, you start to think about this situation between Kraus and Matteo here, and you're kind of wondering, well, if you're Kraus, why are you wasting so much of your push to pass if you've got these cars around you and you know the tire advantage is going to be where you are later on in this race? The real answer is track position. That's all on purpose just to stay one spot ahead, because we know here at Long Beach it's such a narrow track surface that it's really hard to make passes. Turn 1 and maybe turn 6, turn 9, several places where you can go underneath or up top and try to make a move. It's hard to come by. Passes come by at a premium here in Long Beach, California. So Kraus is understanding that and just coming to terms with, all right, if I can burn a bit more of my push to pass, then at that point I can hold on to this position to which I don't have to work harder later on.
And you talk about working hard later on. The drivers on the primaries may have to defend from those on the Waiulis. Plenty of fighting up and down through the field, even with some damage on the front end of Matteo Quenzu's car. He's got NASCAR driver Alex Russell, who actually represented Tony Kanaan Esports in 2025. He's in 11th. And then Adam Blocker. These are all drivers, by the way, double-digit gains. Michael Romanidis is the biggest gainer with 22 spots, but Adam Blocker plus 18, Kwame Scott plus 16, Russell plus 17. Getting through the chaos with minimal damage has really set these drivers up well, as Alex Russell gets a great exit onto East Seaside Way, building up to 160 miles an hour, looks to the inside, doesn't force the issue.
Awesome to see these double-dipping drivers with Russell and even Kwame Scott racing the Coke Series last season, and I'm sure they're going to try and qualify. He's going to dive deep in turn 11. Wonderful move by Russell, textbook to stay under and not flinch in the moment's notice. But it's great to see those two drivers in this, trying to try a different thing, challenge themselves as sim racers, and I think that really opened up the dam, Arjuna, because here are the battles inside the top 12. Gustavo Aerial dive in turn 1 on Adam Blocker, and Matteo Quenzer with all that damage. I mean, there's only so much time you can hold on to position with until those better cars that don't have damage at all start to swing their way around.
Yeah, Gustavo finished 7th in last year's championship, was on for a top 5 before a incident at the season finale in Nashville. But he's top 5 a race at Long Beach, somewhat struggling now to put himself back into the top 10. The damage on Matteo's car quite evident as easy moves from Gustavo Aerial. Alex Russell not really defending too hard as difference of compound of tire makes itself known. And go back to Adam Blocker though just for a second. We talk about double dipping from multiple sim racing championships, KB. But imagine double dipping as a race engineer. Adam Blocker used to be a race engineer at Junkos Hollinger. He's moved over to Indy next with Chip Ganassi Racing as well. But the engineering side of things is always so interesting, especially on ovals. And that's where Nexus Esports is going to be so interesting. An oval team with so much eNASCAR pedigree. And I caught up with Kwame just before the race. He said he's here to have fun. This is him getting away from the normal grind of eNASCAR. He's enjoying the road courses, and look at this, sitting in 8th position right now.
And he posted on social media when he committed to running the Indy NXT qualifying series that he was in here to challenge himself. He wanted to expand his horizons just beyond the oval sim racing, to which he's been known for over the last few years, but wanted to get better at these road courses, wanted to try out a different series, try a new car, and try a new level of competition, trying to hit it with the big boys. And Kwame's doing a fantastic job alongside Russell right now. Both of those kind of eNASCAR drivers in the top 15. And Scott as well won in the Indy NXT qualifying series. He won the oval race at the Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway, so it's not like it was a slouch of a qualifying effort for Scott. And again, just one of those rarity items of cars that aren't damaged at all from that lap 1 incident. Is just making fantastic use of the track position right now.
In terms of fighting, well, Luke McEwen has fought his way through some of the traffic that we've seen. He's now 6 seconds clear of Alessandro Bico, increasingly under pressure from defending champion Diogo Pinto, as Pinto's worked his way up a couple of spots, staying out of most of the drama on the race start. It is a bumpy surface though here, and some of the lines that they take over the curbs don't help, and so the setups that they're running have got to be a balance between gripping up nicely when they plant the power down on the rear wheels, but also riding some of the bumps with as much nuance as possible, and easier said than done on occasion. Adam Blocker in the team height with Powerslide Motorsports machine, closing up on the back of his teammate representing Powerslide Motorsports.
And these cars are not one to enjoy too much, y'all, with all that downforce at the underbody of the race car. So you're right, that setup really has to be that sweet spot between being planted enough to where you can be fast off the corners, and then just being able to have that softness, that springiness in the race car to be able to stand up on those bumps and get away from some of those more treacherous corners. I mean, you go around turn 6, turn 7, turn 8. I mean, those parts of the track get really, really dangerous in the way the bumps handle, and especially the curbing where you've hit. We saw Kraus sort of have a moment sideways off of a corner because he hit those curves at the wrong angle. And so it's really just a balance, and I think that's the great thing about having a track like Long Beach as the first race. You really challenge these teams to find the extra sweet spot versus last season at Indy Road Course, a much smoother track surface, a bit more easier to set up for that.
Yes, and in terms of the rest of the schedule, Portland up next is a quasi-street circuit, but definitely not as bumpy as this one, and likely to involve a bit more passing from what we've heard. Michele Costantini's just been passed by Gustavo Ariel. There is Peter Berryman, who is 13 laps down and trying to stay out of trouble, but seemingly trouble finding him as he heads up towards turn 6 and just trying to get some points on the board at the end of the day. We have another taking a pit lane. So after Michael Romanidis fixed his front wing, Michele Costantini's got to fix his front wing and his back wing, KB.
This is going to be a surgical effort from his pit crew on pit road to get Costantini's IR18 back and ready, but he had his rear wing kind of hanging off of the race car for a good portion of the first run. It finally let up after a little while, all that strain, that tension, the virtual wind that gets the car when it's kind of cruising over 125, 130 miles an hour plus, you know, with the damage. So for Costantini, it's going to lose him on that track position, but it's really a case of just surviving with the way that chaos has really strung out this field. And with so many heavy hitters out, I mean, you talk about Veyron, Sam Quitzer, Ricardo Rico, drivers we thought maybe would be in contention for the overall championship, starting well with this race. As long as you can keep all 4 tires on the track, that's exactly what matters, to be that one step ahead.
You can see that positions gained and lost on the left side of the screen where there's big green numbers. It means equally big red numbers appear further down the board as well. Adam Blocker is now plus 21. Keep an eye on Michael Romanidis, though, as we get towards the latter stages of this race. We saw Peter Berryman involved in some incidents, and I say incidents, multiple through the day. This is him by himself into turn number 1. Bit too much commitment and slams the outside tires.
I usually don't see the back end step out like that. You often just see the right front tire just carry up the racetrack. A lot of understeer when you have so much speed entering turn 1, but it was just the opposite problem. Felt like the car was gripping up a little bit too much and got sideways. And here's our first call on pit road. Remember, Diogo Pinto, defending champion, started on the Waiulis. Philip Kraus was the only driver in the midst of the top 5 at least to be on the main primary tires. This is the window as we approach halfway, Arjuna, where everyone's going to start to figure out when their time is going to be to hit pit road. Pinto decides he wants to be first, and he still has 8 seconds used of his push to pass, 192 left. So a lot left in the tank for Pinto to use, especially in this final run.
He will come out behind some traffic, although I don't think it will slow him down too much. Will Luke McEwen heading out through the hairpin at just over 25 miles an hour respond? Yes. Now, this is slightly early in some ways, I felt. If the word that we had heard was about 20 laps on these tires would be good. They're putting a couple more laps now onto what is the slower compound of tire, but potentially with a bit less fall off. Bico follows. Now, Mateo, Kraus, they're on the push to pass, so expect them to stay out and cycle to the front of the field.
And this is going to bring up an interesting complex here, because all those drivers who are coming in now are the McEwens, the Pintos, a lot of the red line racing drivers of the world. Now they have to think, once I slap on these primary tires, I have to save probably a ton at the beginning of this stint. Because yes, the hard tires, the primary, can last a while, and it can last a good distance, but I don't know if 23 laps is really enough. I think it's going to be right on the edge of where the tire life's going to be, and the last thing you really want to do is use too much of that to the point where it really becomes an issue. So that's going to be a big point of conversation, especially for McEwen, who was out in front but was using a lot of his push to pass. Now he's got to wait back on those primary tires and basically react to what these guys do at the front. A split call.
Well, Diogo Pinto did try and short Phil, but it hasn't got him in front of Alessandro Bico. They've lost some ground to Luke McEwen. Bico and Pinto very close on track, by the way, so I think Pinto's looking to try and make his move while Bico's got colder tires potentially on his machine. Meanwhile, here comes Alex Spetz in from the top 3 on track. Pinto looks like he will make his move on Bico down at the end of EC side way into turn 9, and so that's important. That's effectively second on track. That swapped hands KB, and now can Pinto close the gap to his teammate and maybe grab the points for the race win.
Yeah, that's huge to make that little switch over and have that perfect merge at the exit of pit road. That's exactly what we want. Really quick pit stop. You have a good portion of track to use where you can make up all that time. And Pinto, again, calling him Captain Consistency for a reason, just doing what he does best, being up the front. And even if he doesn't win tonight's effort from Long Beach, it's still going to be a very powerful first step into defending that first championship. And what's really going to be interesting is where these guys in the middle come out, where Alex Spetz is really going to end up with. He comes out right in front of Adam Blocker, who came into pit road about 20 laps ago to make his decision. So for Spetz, obviously going to be a big defense here, and off for the top 5 as finally Mateo enters pit road, and Philip Kraus is seeing the daylight for the first time tonight.
Blocker has yet to pit, 20 laps is his run from the start, so he does owe us a pit stop. So alongside of Russell and Kenzer, I think we expect them to try and delay before they switch on to the alternate compound of tires. Here, by the way, is Phil Kraus with a lapped car behind him. That is not anyone fighting him right now for track position. And remember, started on the harder primary compound, slower initially, but falls off slightly slower. Everyone else on the faster Waiuli, a special street-based compound from Firestone, as opposed to the road course tire that we'll use traditionally. But KB, I do think that if it's about 20 laps or so you can do in the Waiulis, Phil Kraus, his pit window opens this time by.
And he's going to be right in the sweet spot. Of course, he's got to be really careful. Luke McEwen right on his tail, or trying to catch up the 14.9 seconds. So it is going to really close down with how much time Kraus is going to have to spend on pit road. But I really like this place if you're Phil Kraus, a driver who kind of struggled more on those road and street courses last season, and seems like from the slimmers of brilliance we've seen tonight, it's a much more balanced effort. Kraus has been more confident in races like these, and he's starting to really implement that right now. Just has to tiptoe around all of this lap traffic, make sure he can get around. That's Gustavo Ariel, who had used so much of his push to pass early on in the first run, now just trying to use the hard tires to last him into the end of this race.
Did you see how much Kraus is sliding the rear end, KB? Yeah. He is holding on for all he is worth right now. Let's focus in on the fight for effectively second, though, on the track. Once Kraus dives down to pit lane, it's Honda on the front nose of that Williams Sim Racing car of Alessandro Bico as they wind their way back on towards West Shoreline Drive. Diogo Pinto also in a Honda badge machine, continuing to hold on. And if you've never driven a Dallara IR18 before, no power steering, and look, you can barely see it, but Diogo is wrestling that car as they work through the corners, KB. Look at it shaking as they run down this back straightaway.
You know, a lot of drivers, specifically the pros, they like to use direct drive wheels. They use more of the realistic settings, so it throws the hands around. You got to be real physical to master a lap around Long Beach. And after 20 laps, it starts to feel sore. After 41 laps, it's going to feel dead at this point. So for all those drivers, they have to work really, really hard just to gain entry. There are a lot more rougher parts of this track than in other areas. I mean, turn 1 is a good area to be really calm and collective. And you turn 6 through 9, very physical through some of the bit of elevation change and overall the bumps that hit you on the straightaways. It's just a fascinating road course. That's what's made it so special in IndyCar lore for so many years. The way, even though we've had config changes over the last 20-ish years or so, it's still a magical place. And there's where Phil Kraus is going to try to make his money. He's got the car in front. Remember, that was Gustavo Ariel that finally got around. He's not really thinking about Ariel as much. He's just thinking about holding on to this track position for now. But it's really that point of how long do you stay out before that crossover point starts to bleed for you.
Look at the difference between fresh and worn tires. Gustavo has cleared up the road already of Phil. So he's just trying to make sure that the final couple of laps that he will have on the Waiulis are as painless as possible. There's that risk versus reward that you're kind of balancing right now. And ultimately, strategy is what makes these races so interesting, even if they are slightly shorter in nature than real-world races in the NTT IndyCar Series. For more information about the series, head on to iRacing.com/IndyCar-esports. You can learn more about the schedule, the drivers, maybe more importantly, if you like looking through rule books, you have your PDF to flick your way through and all the nuances of the points. And that's slightly important, KB, though, because there are bonus points in this championship. And so it's not just about where you finish. Often, it's about how you finish, how you qualify, bonus points for leading laps, fastest laps as well. And that's what Kraus is ticking off right now, leading laps at the front of the field.
He wants to lead as much to compensate for what could be the fastest lap point. But then you think about the other end of it. If Kraus is able to switch to the Waiuli tires with enough time to spare, to which he has enough life to keep up forward, he can strike for the fastest lap. He has enough leeway to do it. If he's got space on the racetrack, why not go for the fastest lap and sweep as much as you can? Even if you don't grab the win, a good finishing position plus those bonus points is going to be near close enough to a driver that's able to capture the victory at the end. So for Kraus, he really has this race just a bit in his back pocket. I'm really just curious to see where that blend is going to be, near 15 seconds, but that gap is slowly starting to come down. So Kraus has to really be careful about how long he stays out before the time is not in his favor, and that switch to the Waiuli tires is going to hurt him more than help him stay in front or give him a chance at the lead again.
And if I was told 20 laps, but Diogo Pinto went about 17, well, Phil Kraus has already left himself in a slightly better position. He's ate the pain. Is he headed driver's right? No, he extends one more lap. He's staying relatively close to Gustavo Ariel, who has continued to burn through the push to pass. You start with 200 seconds. Gustavo is down to 60 seconds left to go. And in contrast to that, Phil Kraus still with 122 at his disposal. Luke McEwen is slowly whittling away at that supply. He has got a 10-second advantage back to Diogo Pinto and Alessandro Bico, who continue to squabble amongst themselves. They cross the line once more and head up towards turn number 1 at speeds that reach 170 miles an hour. Pinto with 153 seconds, Bico with 164. Plenty left with 16 laps to go.
And with these teams, you have Team Redline, an expanded Drago Racing field. You've got the Williams Sim Racing Group, Williams Sim Racing Academy. With how many drivers they have, they can be willing to expand their level of horizon on what they can do with the push to pass. And we saw that last season as well. Different drivers on the same team. Some of them being like, hey, I'm going to throw it all out the window. I'm going to put the sink in. I'm just going to do whatever I can and burn all this push to pass and see what happens. Versus those that are going to keep the bank filled and then start to spend a little bit more later on in this race. And finally, we have the call from the race leader. Kraus is coming in for the Waiuli tires with 15 laps to go, so it will give his tires enough life to make it to the end of this race. And given he's made McEwen use all of his push to pass just to make up all this ground, how much can Kraus regain to put himself in contention for the win? And then another big question, how much other track position will he lose now that second and third are starting to come by?
I think it's third. That is really still up for grabs with 15 laps to go. Kraus will emerge close to 8 seconds, I would say, back from Pinto and Bico, who continue to be trailed by one of our lap machines. Here comes Adam Blocker as well. Our fans in chat were going rabid, waiting for a look at the Indy Next race engineer. And finally, their answers have been, or their prayers have been answered. There's Phil Kraus, by the way. I said it would be about, what was it, 8 seconds, I think? It ends up at about 10 seconds, but just in front of Nicholas Matteo, the Drago Racing machine, and that's crucial, because KB, what it means is after eating all of that pain, Phil Kraus was still able to come out in front of a driver who was in front of him when he came down pit lane.
Yep, that's kind of all you want. Even if you're not able to get the huge heavy maker swing and gain multiple positions on the track, if you can get a small win here and there, and in this case against Nicolas Matteo, that's a good sign. Smile on your face if you're Philip Kraus, because you're also in the top 5 and you've got a good chance to make up even more ground now that you're on that alternate tire versus everyone else that has to putt around on what's going to be the more worn primary tires.
Well, and KB, the thing that held Kraus back last year from really mounting a championship fight as Luke McEwen now makes his way past Adam Blocker, who goes a lap down in 11th position. But Kraus finished 29th at Indy GP and then 13th at this race at Long Beach. After that, he only finished outside of the top 10 once. If Kraus had had a better start to the season, Diogo Pinto would have had a lot more pressure. Kraus is doing exactly what he needs to right now. A top 5, a top 4. He couldn't really ask for much more, flying the flag for Tommy Milner and for Team Heinz with Powerslide Motorsports.
Yeah, that's perfect for Kraus. It's kind of minimizing the poor performances on the road courses from a season ago. Making sure that maybe you don't win these races, maybe you're not dominant, but you lead some laps, you put yourself out in front for a little bit, and most importantly, you can capture a good position. You start to minimize the negatives. It starts to bring you in a better position as there's Alexander Russell coming out. It's a really scary blend for those leaders in turn 1, and you got to hang to the right. There's a blue line that you stay in. It's kind of a sharp angle that you cut into the first corner coming off of pit lane, and so him trying to unlap himself is going to be a little bit fun to watch. But yeah, back to the point of Kraus, if you can minimize the negatives, that really will put you in a very standout spot, especially in this championship where the ovals have dwindled in numbers. And the moments that you can shine on a track where Kraus is more specialized at, they're less favorable to come by. So limit the negatives on the road courses. You got yourself a potential double threat for a championship.
Teammates side by side at the end of the back straightaway, braking from 160 miles an hour. Adam Blocker gets it done. But crucially, Michele Costantini is closing, and the front and rear wing have been replaced on that Team VRS machine, and a top 10 is up for grabs here. Michele Costantini, who finished last year's championship 8th in the standings, and a pole to victory win in the penultimate round at the Milwaukee Speedway. And so definitely a driver that we'll have to keep our eye on. Used to race with Coanda Esports last year, had the honor and privilege of representing Ferrari Esports, something for Michele as an Italian that you can imagine was very close to his heart. And KB, while that part of his sim racing journey has come to an end, Michele now has an opportunity to fight in the car he loves best, this Dallara IR18.
This is still the same Michele Costantini, as fast as he ever can be on iRacing. Such a talent behind the wheel in iRacing. And I mean, we mentioned last season the way he had that emotional victory in Milwaukee, given the bad luck of the early season for him. He had, 3 finishes outside of the top 20 in the first 5 or so races of the season, and then didn't finish outside of the top 10 until one race at Gateway that he finished 18th in. But for the most part, he had a very successful back half, and he wants to replicate that this time in the first half, put together a more full season, and he's got lots of headway here on Russell and Blocker to make some moves in these final few.
As we look forward through the field, Phil Kraus using those Waiuli alternate tires to great effect. A 10-second advantage, now down to 7 seconds. He is closing on the podium sitters, Diogo Pinto and Alessandro Bico. The question is, with 11 laps to go, Kraus down to 102 seconds of the 200 seconds of push to pass. Will he have enough time to fight his way forward? Jacob Oster has just left pit lane. 18th spot for former Team I5G driver, now lined up with the Team Hype with Powerslide Motorsports. If you notice, I've said Powerslide Motorsports quite a lot because a lot of the iRacing IndyCar community has now kind of banded together. They realize, KB, that to fight against the likes of a Team Redline, they have to work together. Team Redline's a professional sim racing team. Phil Kraus is a computer science student by day, and so you see those lap times. To try and match Redline, the only thing they can do is bandy together. It's got to the point where at the end of last year there was a race, the PRI Hoosier 500, where Powerslide Motorsports locked out the front 9 rows of a Indy 500 virtual event, and it was called the Great Wall of Powerslide.
Well, you know what they say, the phrase, strength in numbers, right? If you're going to beat a Goliath, have enough people with you in a big enough army to go and take down the Goliath. Have enough people in your arsenal so that you can hit them on all fronts. And for Powerslide Motorsports and Team Hype, I mean, that's the effort they're doing. And, you know, you can think of the same bit for Drago Racing. You know, they had 4 or 5 drivers in last season's edition of this series. They've expanded. They added Peter Berryman, who was a road course threat and a threat all across the board in last season's edition and across many other open wheel series on iRacing. So you expand the efforts, you try to beat down the big team, and it kind of almost feels like, you know, what LeBron, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh did back in the Miami Heat days. You know, they tried to topple some of the better teams in the league by forming a band all together. At that point, it was the Boston Celtics, who had Kevin Garnett, Prime Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo. They were the super team to beat. It's kind of the equivalent here in this series with the team expansion.
It does look as though Costantini struggling a bit with some damage potentially. Nicholas Matteo increasingly being caught by his teammate in the Drago Racing number 2. Now, these two running similar liveries, but Drago Racing with their 5 cars have at least differentiated them slightly. They've got the white base car with some red highlights, and then they've got the red car with some white highlights. And so Drago Racing, the commentators, the broadcasters, we'd like to thank you. There's one team here with 7 cars that are all identical. I won't name who they are, but they know who they are. Alex Betts, through the fountain section, added back in 1999. And KB, I've commentated on many a thing in sim racing, including a famous moment of Max Verstappen crashing into Sven Haase. I don't think I've commentated over chaos quite like what we saw at the fountain on lap number 1.
I've seen really big crashes. That may just be up there with some of the largest crashes I've seen on iRacing, at least in the effect that it had. It kind of rumbled everyone through the field, and it created what ultimately is this top 10. You have a mix of those at the front that kind of got away from it. You have those that just skimpered by, you know, guys like Costantini who picked up damage but found a way to come down pit road and repair that car. And then others like Kwame Scott, Alexander Russell that just were at the back, waiting, being patient, saw the carnage, tiptoed around it, and now all of a sudden they're amidst of the aftermath in a good spot for good points. So it's just crazy to see how that one lap incident right there at that portion of the racetrack was enough to really bring groundbreaking changes in this race and who was up front.
And after a qualifying session where the top 10 were covered by 1/10 of a second, those are the margins that we are talking about in the world of sim racing. Blink, and you find yourself finding a lot more cars in front of you to fight your way through. Less than 10 laps to go. Luke McEwen in a dominant position. Diogo Pinto, Alessandro Bico holding Phil Kraus at bay with 8 to go. That gap still 6 seconds or so. The green wheels on McEwen, how you identify him. And remember, fighting for their share of $50,000 in this INDYCAR Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series. $20,000 going to our winner, $12,000 to second place. It's a healthy chunk of change in the bank account.
Yep, dollar bills, y'all. That's what speaks. For those drivers who perform well in this series, that's going to be the reward. But again, this is the first step of many in this 2026 season. And for McEwen, this is going to be a studded effort at the front, given the way he prided himself in form late last season, and then just tonight has been outright dominant. To see what he's been able to do for Team Redline, making that switch from last season to this, and it's been great to see him up front. Some good battles are still building up quite a bit. Michael Romanidis is going to try to give a charge to Kwame Scott, make this a healthy fight for what's going to be 8th in these final few laps. And the difference between them, Scott is on the Waiuli tires, primaries for Michael Romanidis, and less push to pass for Scott. So very leveled out here in these final laps.
Michael Romanidis very much with a lot more road course experience under his belt, but this is the sort of challenge that the New York native Kwame Scott will relish. Again, remember, I love the attitude that he entered this championship with. He's here to learn. He's here to escape the regular grind that is sim racing, practicing for a couple of hours a day. It adds up. It wears you down over time when you're doing it week in and week out. And so a chance to learn something new is often the best thing to do when you feel the frustration. And Kwame Scott has picked up that challenge pretty quickly. We should remember that in NASCAR, increasingly, there is a dependence, much like in the real world of NASCAR, to be good on road courses. But it's fundamentally two very different sort of cars. And so just think about the transition that someone like a Scott McLaughlin made when he transferred from V8 supercars into an Indy car. It's a similar sort of challenge that Scott's dealing with. Lights up the rear tires, might have clipped the wall with that left rear, and pulls to the side of the track. I think Michael Romanidis, the Greek driver, will be waved through into turn number 1.
Yeah, clear-cut pass, textbook in turn 1. Don't fight it too hard. Don't make a mess out of it if there's a mistake. Just step back and wait if you can try and attack again. And back to what you said about the mentality for Kwame Scott, and even a bit of the mentality for Nexus Esports. You know, jumping into this series, when you have that refreshed mentality, you kind of think, we have nothing to lose. We're here to learn. We're here to enjoy the process. I think you put a lot less pressure on yourself as a result. But when you're in the grind, you know, when you're with the team and, you know, you've been here multiple times, start to put a little bit of that pressure. And even if you don't feel it presently in the moment, subconsciously you've got it there. I've got to perform. I've got to win races. I want to go out and win a championship. But for drivers like Scott and this team, they think we've got less pressure on ourselves. This is fun, a learning curve to get around. We've got a whole season to do it. So they have a lot of fun, and the result's going to speak for with the top 10 for sure.
You can see the push to pass on the left. Gustavo Ariel is ticking down, the only driver in single digits. Inside of the next 2 miles, expect him to drain that reserve of energy. The 50 or 60 horsepower that gets it spat to the rear wheels. Meanwhile, the teammates, Russell and Blocker, about 5 seconds difference in the push to pass numbers between the two of them as they fight for the final spot inside of the top 10. Blocker up 20 positions as it stands. Russell behind up 17. So given how qualifying went, these are valuable championship points. And Adam Blocker, we talked about his real world pedigree. He's actually won the Indianapolis 500 as part of Joseph Newgarden's crew in 2020 when he was working with Chevrolet on the engine side of things. But KB, he's got a great pedigree in Indy 500s on iRacing, including the official iRacing Indy 500 with the 13 plus years of history that it has had. The problem, he's never quite crossed the finish line in first position, and so his unfortunate nickname in the iRacing IndyCar community Discord, all I do is finish second.
But you know what that brings up? A chance that you're inevitably going to finish first in one of those races, right? You're always knocking on the door. You're always there. And I think for a lot of drivers, their mentality is, if I'm there, that's more than enough. You know, I can win a race. I'll feel the heartbreak of a second. But as long as I'm there, I know I still have it in me to be competitive and to be right up with the rest of them. So, I mean, for Blocker, his expansion into this series is great to watch. And you know, his history, I was looking up him a couple days ago and seeing those second place finishes and everything of the like. But all it speaks to is the experience that Adam Blocker has.
Lauren Lebigra battles with Rob Malechka, who won 2 races last year, both on ovals, but with a lack of downforce offered missing front element on the left side of the front wing. It's 19th and 20th. Remember, Florian Lebiger started third position, involved in that opening lap. Well, at the very least, he's got fastest lap right now, which will help grab some championship points. Remember those bonuses I talked about? Well, pole award, you grab 1 point, so Luke McEwen, already championship leader technically. Lead a lap, that's another point. Most laps led, that's 2 bonus points. And so Luke McEwen could find himself with a 54-point swing as we leave the streets of Long Beach. 2 laps left to go, 2 laps from what has been a flawless drive from Luke McEwen.
He's gotten through all the lap traffic. I mean, he's used up all of his push to pass, but with the gap he holds right now at 11.2 seconds, I think that was really on purpose and by design. He did this in the first run, by the way. He used a lot of his push to pass, even while in clean air and up in the front, just because he understood how powerful a large gap can be and how much of a reach it's going to be for everyone second on back, just to make up any sliver of time. And while it's going to crunch down a little bit here between himself and his teammate Pinto, it's more than enough of a buffer to hold on to, at least for the final 2 laps. Now a lap and a half. And it's been fantastic to see the level of performance for Luke McEwen, who, again, like we said last season, had several missed opportunities to go out and win races. And he's just less than a half lap away, or less than a full lap away from completing it and being 1 for 1 in 2026.
Behind him, I think Blocker and Russell, the closest fight. Mateo and Spets, the teammates, still only covered by a couple of tenths as well. With just under 2 miles left here at the streets of Long Beach, as the opening round of the Thrustmaster INDYCAR iRacing Pro Series is about to come to an end. Defending champion Diogo Pinto doing a great job to hold on to second. Phil Kraus, second place in 2024, in fourth as well. The 2 favorites, the championship names of our inaugural season, KB, have had a good start as well.
Yep, and it's different. Kraus had a 13th place finish here last season. Pinto finished third. Now they're much more level. But they've got to watch for this man right here, Luke McEwen, who's going to put out that first step. And much like Eduardo Leo did last season, it's going to be a chance of who can beat him when the next round of the championship comes around. And it's going to be phenomenally competitive, given what we've seen tonight. And McEwen just has a few more corners to dial up his first win this season.
A driver who, in 2024, represented the Apex Racing team. Since then, has become an FIA F4 Esports Global Champion, and now represents Team Redline, maybe the biggest team in all of sim racing. Barely a reaction as Luke McEwen crosses the line, winner of the opening round of the INDYCAR Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series. The job's not done. 7 more weeks left. A championship is on the line. Diogo Pinto, defending champion, will be second. Alessandro Bico, take a bow, the best rookie of the day, to grab third, and fights all the way through. Here comes Mateo and Spets. Not quite a drag race to the line, but burnouts as they make their way to the checkered flag at the end of round number 1.
And for Drago Racing, that's going to be a fantastic performance. Having Mateo, having Spets up there, all those finishers doing well at the end, that's going to be a solid, positive sign for what's to come for the rest of this 2026 season. But again, from that reaction with McEwen as he was crossing the line, it's not over. Far from over. Lots of work to be done, and understanding the hunger from the missed opportunities last season, he's on top this time around. A lot more to play for in 2026.
A win at Barber, but outside of that, Luke McEwen with those few missed opportunities. We'll grab a look at those race results. I tell you what, the list of carnage will be on clear display when we run our way down to the tail end of that running order. Team Redline 1 and 2 after what was a impressive 2025 for them. Diogo Pinto, part of the team that won the Inter Esports Global Championship GTP class. Well, they started off a brand new year in the way they just know how. On top, and stylish celebrations from Luke McEwen as he celebrates a second win in the INDYCAR Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series. I'm sure plenty of conversation between the drivers after the bedlam on the opening lap of the race, but that was all in the rearview mirror of race winner Luke McEwen, 11 seconds clear of his teammate Diogo Pinto, with the number 1 on his car. Alessandro Bico, the best of our rookies, in third, and starting off the season on a high, as did Phil Kraus, the best of the regular iRacing IndyCar drivers. Nicholas Mateo and Alex Spetz, the two Drago Racing drivers, separated by just a few tenths at the line, with the Brazilian Gustavo Ariel recovering up to 7th, one of the best recovery drives of those involved in the madness. Romanidis, Kwame Scott, Adam Blocker, other drivers with double digits positions gained, while Alex Russell, Michele Costantini, Sotomuto, handful of cars all one lap down, including the Hungarian David Toth, Pablo Espez in the Williams Sim Racing Academy machine, and Mateo Kenzer. Esteban Rodriguez 2 laps down, Jacob Oster 4 laps down, Labigra Malechka 6 laps adrift as we begin to get into those that did not see the end. Thompson, the final car at the checkered flag, with Van der Sant Berryman, Amor, Munoz, Tamas Shimon, Sam Coitet, Elliot Veyron, Vasiliad Spelitsiotis, and remember Eduardo Leo, who won the opening round of last year's championship alongside of Ricardo Rico. Some big names with some big work to do, but Luke McEwen did the work to open up the season, and he's standing by with KB.
And flawless work here in this Long Beach Grand Prix for the first race of this 2026 season. Luke, you had a top 5 here last season. It's been a long time since then, many changes for you, lots more experience, and you come around in dominant fashion. How impactful is the statement made tonight to set the tone for what's going to be another championship pursuit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's amazing to get the win. My pace going into it, obviously with the updates to the car, so things have changed, so it's nice to see that the pace is really good, obviously. Yeah, I just really wanted to have a good start to the season. I think it's really important to have momentum in a season, so kind of started off perfectly, yeah.
We mentioned just a bit how this championship compared to last is just a bit shorter, a lot more road courses, and it's 8 races, so it seems like a dash from this one up until we're at Laguna Seca, which is going to take probably a little more time than we thought it would. For you, how do you parlay that momentum into these other races and maintain that level of consistency to be up there in this championship?
Yeah, I think confidence is a very big thing, especially with the qualifying laps being 1-lap shootouts. Having good confidence going into them is a really, really big thing. So I think starting off strong and just like I said, building up the momentum through the season really, really helped. So, yeah.
So we go to Portland, brand new track for this INDYCAR Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series. First time you guys and the rest of the guys will see it in this competition. What are your early thoughts about that track and maybe what we should expect to see and maybe any practice laps you've done there?
Yeah, I think it'd be a good race. It's a very, I guess, different track, right? It's a very short track, where there's a very long back straight. So I think we'll see a bit more overtaking, a bit more racing. And with the track surface, I think the tires will be very hard to manage. So it should be a good race.
Gonna be up for the challenge, but you stand up strong here in the first race. Luke, congratulations on the win here from Long Beach. We'll see you in the rest of the field next week at Portland.
Thank you.
Luke McEwen stepping up to the top of the podium in the first race of this 2026 season. We now join Michael Romanidis, who finishes this race from 8th, but what a journey it was from you, from 29th on the grid up until a top 10. You had to come to a dead stop in turn 2 from the fountain with a huge crash. Walk us through that and how you got through it, how you were able to step up in front near the end.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I mean, that was a pretty unique lap 1. I don't think I've ever gained 19 positions in one lap. I was just surprised going across the line and seeing about 5 cars ahead of me when I was starting 29th. I mean, that was crazy. I don't know really what happened. I was definitely expecting something to happen in the fountain with so many cars going kind of slow and always stacking up. I think that was a little bit a full circle coming from last year where I got collected in the fountain and DNF'd at this exact spot. But yeah, I mean, I was just trying to avoid damage, try and make my way through any sort of gap that opened after about 5 seconds of people towing. And then I got through the fountain and actually picked up damage on the corner after because there was another crash that happened in the right-hander. So that was quite a bit of a shame. Maybe cost me 1 position in the end, but I don't think I have anything to complain about after starting 29th after a pretty bad, a little bit of an unlucky quality performance, but again, a pretty decent race considering that.
I'm curious because you were among several drivers that picked up wing damage after that first lap incident. What did that car feel like as you had to just survive on all 4 tires until that pit stop where you can spend that time to get tires and fuel and repair the car?
Yeah, exactly. I was, I think, losing about 2 seconds a lap. Every lap on the alternate. Thankfully, I started on the alternate because I had to pit basically as soon as possible, which I think was 13 or 14 lap into the race, and just put a full tank, repair the front wing, which is thankfully on this car just take 5 seconds, and that was most of the damage cleared. I also had a little bit of wheel damage, but I think on this car it's not a huge problem. So yeah, just pitted as soon as possible because I saw that I was losing a couple of seconds per lap. I knew there was quite a big gap behind still because most of the cars behind were completely out of the race, but I knew there was some cars that had a pretty decent car behind me, so I still had to try and maximize my race time and try and stay off. I think Gustavo was coming from behind. Ultimately he passed me on the pit stop because I had to change the wing, wait a few seconds, but yeah, overall I think decent considering that, but still a bit of a shame to pick up a bit of damage. Would be nice to do the whole race unaffected, but it just goes to show that anything can happen on this track.
You're one of 3 Drago Racing drivers to end up in the top 3. How do you parlay that momentum with yourself and the team heading into Portland next week?
Hopefully try and do a little bit of a better qualifying for myself. I think the guys did pretty well considering everything. I think we're more or less on the pace in qualifying and especially the race. So I think the guys did a great job. Ultimately just came down to luck, where you were in the fountain, what position you were in. So tough luck for, I think, Peter and Ricardo got selected. Yeah, but being Nicholas and Spet there is pretty nice. So hopefully we can keep the momentum going. Obviously a little bit of a shorter season this year, but still consistency will help for sure. So try and keep scoring the top 10 finishes like Diogo did last year, and hopefully we can be somewhere in the mix at the end.
Well, it's a good step forward in race 1 of this 2026 season. Michael, congrats on the top 10. We'll see you in the field at Portland next week.
Thank you very much.
That's Michael Romanidis sending up in 8th place, one of 3 Drago Racing cars in the top 10. Luke McEwen, the race winner.
And you heard it from Michael, Captain Consistent. Top 10s will get you into the championship fight. And so next week, quasi-street circuit. Portland International Raceway, one of a handful of tracks added recently from the NTT IndyCar schedule. Join us Thursday, January 15th on the IndyCar channels on the iRacing Esports Network at 8 p.m. Eastern for all the fun. And KB, it's a monumental year in many ways for IndyCar community, not just because we've got our 2nd season of the Thrustmaster INDYCAR iRacing Pro Series, but more importantly, the IndyCar video game coming out later this year. Lots of eyes on the real world, lots of eyes on the virtual world as well.
And you know what? The video game coming out soon is going to mean that we're going to get a lot more IndyCar changes in iRacing, which is exciting, not only for us, that we get to cover these cars and run these cars in our off time, you know, have some practice laps, but for the drivers in this series, they're going to have a big change, added stuff for the IndyCar series, and I think that's always exciting when you have that level of catering towards a series like that. That's been so exciting over the last few years. But this series, based on this first race, we had it all. Elemental strategy, chaos, everything, dominance with Luke McEwen. So this championship, even though it's shorter than last season's, is definitely going to bring the big boost of fun that we come to expect.
Only thing we didn't have, a sprinkle of rain, which on the streets of Long Beach arguably would not have been the wisest given the chaos that we had anyway. But thanks so much for your company here in the opening round of this wonderful IndyCar Thrustmaster iRacing Pro Series. Oh, shout out to our production team behind the scenes, keeping all of the action coming to you. Kenneth Bueno alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati. Can't wait to do it all again next week. Chaos at the fountain. Will it be the same at Turn 1 at Portland? You know, it might just be in the script. See you then.